Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to round two of Double Trouble with Jessie. We're always getting into trouble, but we like that anyway. We like it like that. Yes, we do. Welcome back, everybody in the chat, to all our lovely wenches with wrenches. And again, congratulations to John Hodge and Stephanie and Lisa D, who get to join Jessie on her workshop beginning on the 13th. It's changed, right? Yes, the 13th of March, sorry. Open Our Eyes, Lord, sponsored by both Jessie and Aquarius Rising Africa. And if you would like to nominate someone else in their position, if you cannot make it yourself, you are welcome to do that. So I hope you guys enjoy it. It's always a pleasure to see guys benefiting from these things that we do. Great. Well, before we get Jessie on, we have a beautiful sponsor, Spooky 2, who are the creators of the home rife machines again. And again, they're coming up with awesome, amazing stuff. I have to say, I just got my new little Spooky 2 rife machine. They're incredible. And I will do a little demo on it in the near future. They're just coming up with more and more simplistic, innovative ways of giving us the home frequency medicine instead of the other stuff, and really having amazing results with that. So we're just going to play our Spooky 2 ad before we get on with Jessie.
Throughout my life, I didn't really put much thought into my food choices. I ate frequent meals, snacked whenever, and ate whenever. I thought, hey, I'm young, I play sports, I lift weights, I'll be alright. As a result, I was diagnosed with male pattern baldness in my early 20s. I fell into a state of self-inflicted low self-esteem. I masked my baldness with hats whenever I hung out with my friends. I tried to avoid letting people see my hairline at all costs. Fast forward to 2024. I was introduced to Spooky 2 thanks to a quaint health store that I stumbled upon in my city. I developed a great friendship with the store's owner, and she introduced me to the mighty power of the Generator X Pro. She gave me an overview about the hardware and about the phenomenon known as quantum entanglement. I was stunned by the seemingly magical science behind it, as if I was just beginning to understand the basics of reality for the first time. I realized how convenient this hardware was, and it essentially allowed me to heal my body anywhere in the world as long as it was plugged into an electrical outlet. So it was a no-brainer buying the Generator X Pro kit. For about 2.5 months, I've been running the Morgellons and Lyme presets, and with any remaining time I have in the day, I run frequencies related to tackling hair loss through the use of Spooky 2 remotes. First, I choose a shell empty preset in the preset tab. Then I selected Universal Square H-Bomb for one remote. I found a few hair programs and saved them into an original user preset and gave them personal names. My preset names are goofy, but I think it makes it more fun. After I've been using the hair programs, I got these little tiny baby hairs growing on my temples. It's a little hard to see on camera, but it's definitely growing. I checked the mirror a little bit too much.
I love it. Check the mirror a little bit too much. I absolutely love that. I got to say, I was chuckling all the way through that video because, I mean, isn't it wonderful how these youngsters just make these videos nowadays? Anyway, you have grandma sitting trying to press play or edit or something. Anyway, guys, get your Spooky 2 machine. You can check in the description area the code Chantelle 2024 and get 5% off your Spooky 2 purchase. As I said, I will show you the latest Hiwi that I had received just a little while ago. It really is amazing. So thank you, Spooky 2. Okay, guys, we have our lovely lady, Jessie, on. There we go.
Hello, hello. And I have to say, out of all the videos I've seen of theirs, that one is probably the funnest and the most creative. I liked that one. I liked the way it was done. Like, it was really cute. It was like, hey, how did he take that little figure and walk to the store? That was my favorite part.
I know the youngsters can really teach us a thing or two about that. I have to say, they are brilliant. I mean, my nephew has started his own YouTube channel as well, and he's a brilliant artist like his dad, and he does fly fishing, catch and release as well. So he makes YouTube videos about all of that. And so creative. I mean, boing, boing, boing. And I'm going, hey, buddy, when are you going to teach grandma here? He goes, okay. I was the one who bought his first work of art. So I said, no, you got to teach me. No, they're amazing, though. So, yeah. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Good. Well, we're going to, before we talk about the Mannequin programming, which is, again, super interesting. Jess, would you like to open for us in prayer, please?
Let's do that. Heavenly Father, again, we thank you for this day. We thank you for this time together. We ask that you would bless our technology, bless our airwaves, bless all of our equipment, and we ask that you would bless the conversation. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jess. Wow. So if you guys didn't get the earlier show, please catch it. We were talking about the Pegasus project as well. And just, wow, it's amazing just how many different types of programming and weaponization that has been used against innocent people. And I actually read something very interesting the other day, which obviously it makes sense, but I hadn't thought about before. It's like this generational programming, and that's why they will often choose kids from the same generation, right? Mm-hmm. Because that evil and that cruelty and that it's not narcissism. Psychopathic.
I think it goes deeper than all of that, because I think what you have is access to different ways of funneling money.
Yeah.
If they're saying that they can close one project or program, they're going to come up with something else, or maybe they're going to even connect them together under two different names so that they're getting, bigger budgets for things. Exactly. I think that it's about money.
And it is. And that's why they'll keep it in the families, because this evil then, as the generations progress, becomes so entrenched in the children and the generations that follow that it becomes normal behavior. I mean, so that's why it becomes so much easier for them to obviously link the demonic entities or attachments to the children, I guess, right?
Yeah, the attachments through the familiar lines. And,
yeah. Wow.
You get the contracts with certain spirits, and that the families will continue to make those contracts with those spirits and serve them,
And make it easier and easier for the spirits to access the families and the kids through the families, just by being more and more evil and it becoming the norm. It's so sad. It really is. Wow.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Mannequin programming is something that I sort of came across actually on Donald Marshall's Facebook page. I was just reading something that he put out, and someone had posted a link in there which took me to this, which was from James Casbolt, who I will just read you a little intro and just to give you an idea of who he is. But it's super interesting. James Casbolt, MI6, agent buried alive. The objective of government mind control research is enslavement. James Casbolt was born in 1976, and his biographical, you get what I'm saying, manuscript about Project Mannequin, James Casbolt, MI6 agent buried alive, was released in 2008. In 2015, Casbolt was sentenced to 12 years in prison for attempted blackmail and threats against his ex-wife, American supermarket heiress Haley Mayer. James is a former MI6 agent who worked in black ops, drug trafficking operations in London between 1995 and 1999. He comes from a family of intelligence officers. His grandfather was in naval intelligence. His father was in MI6 and involved in black ops, and his uncle was an MI5 officer. James wrote his book because he wishes to make amends for his part in these operations and blow the whistle on the crimes against humanity that the intelligence agencies are involved in. MI6 and CIA have cornered the global drug trade, which is worth at least 500 billion pounds a year, more than the global oil trade, and are now bringing the majority of street drugs into America and Britain. They are using the drug money to fund projects classified above top secret, which include building and maintaining of deep underground military bases, the DUMBs. There are now over 4,000 of these bases worldwide, and some of them are 4.25 miles deep. The bases are on average the size of a medium-sized city, and yes, he says there are aliens in them. James is connected to former intelligence officers who have worked in the underground bases on the ET-related projects. There are vast numbers of children and adults disappearing around the world and ending up in underground bases. So that's the introduction, just to give an outline of what that is. Over to you, Jess.
Yeah, so I think some of the important things, like you had said earlier, we talked about the connection, with the different, with the Brotherhood and the sovereign military, with the different military and central intelligence programs. From my experience, I've talked about Nazi Michael Karkock, who came over after World War II. He had two main individuals that he trained initially to oversee the sovereign military training and projects and programs through the U.S. military, and that was, Michael Aquino, Colonel Michael Aquino with the Department of Defense, and John O'Brien with the Central Intelligence. Now, connected to that, you have all these other governmental programs, whether that's actual, military like naval intelligence or, different forms of security. But I would agree with that statement that a lot of these projects and programs are classified as above top secret, which means that you have to have certain clearances to see anything about them. In fact, I've talked about how Colonel Michael Aquino even, because they get funding for these projects, but they don't tell, when they go in and market Congress for their funding or other, or they want to, take it out of their military funding, they're not going to ever say that it includes children. And all of their projects, all of their reports, they're going to, code those and use certain terms. One of those terms was potential. And, where were the unredacted records kept at? He kept those at the Transformation Project, which was located, you had two places that were kind of named San Francisco and later San Diego. So it's plausible that, he kept things multiple places. And then he also, as pompous as Aquino was, he also kept records on his two computers, but you had different locations connected under those. He had one he named Thor and the other he named Glinda, but a lot of the information about underground cities or dumb bases were kept on those computers that he had. So I want to bring out, one of the connections with the Mannequin program is the NSA, which is the National Security Agency, and we have their logo here. On my website, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com, you can go to the coaching tab, in that tab, you'll see when I have available land assignment courses. But in those land assignment courses, I teach people how to read the regional sigils. Um, this is considered a sigil, and what it displays is authority, territory over this certain department, this NSA. And the behind that you have, we've talked about the different parts of the system and the financial backers. So, you're going to have the Sanhedrin and the Vatican and the Holy See, which are going to kind of put out who's got authority, where's the financial backing coming from all of this. So at the very back of this, we see, this blue coloring. And, that tells us a lot, but it tells us that, primarily you're going to have the financial backing of the Vatican and the Holy See. So that's interesting. Why would the Vatican and the Holy See have, be funding our NSA, especially in matters of national security? So that's a huge question. Um, the other Some of the other things I want to point out, we see the lettering, the National Security Agency, we see the United States of America under it, and we see, um, these stars on the side. Now, I get into in the land assignment one how in the regional sigils, you'll see usually the city and the state name and maybe some information about them, but how that wording really represents Masonic lodges or, um, buildings where, they're going to have an authority over that regional area. And usually you'll have it in twos. You'll have a Northern Lodge and a Southern Masonic Lodge. Um, the way the wording is presented tells you whether the North or the South has more authority. So in the government agency departments, it's a little different. It's not necessarily directing us towards a Northern Lodge or a Southern Lodge, but what you have is a connection to, headquarters that they're going to be um, connected to. And in that, we see that the Northern is going to have more authority. The little stars we see on the side tell us that, about underground military connections in the different areas where their main headquarters are going to be. And we see that they're going to have two underground facilities in connection. When you see the eagles um, in the sigils, those are going to go back to more ancient authorities. You're going to have two different types of eagles presented. Usually they'll be black, or they'll be, what's considered the golden or the bald eagles. Um, the black ones will represent Rome and Germany. The golden eagles are more of your current, they're going to represent under the Golden Dawn um, within the system. And usually in that connection to the Golden Dawn, you're going to have the Kabbalah magic. And with that Kabbalah magic, like when you see the eagle, like where it looks like it's mounting or getting ready for flight, or where it has the wings down or folded in, that will represent junior training programs. When we see the eagle with the wings out, whether it's single-headed or two-headed, it's going to represent, degrees in of illumination, meaning that, you're going to have individuals that are going to be considered 32 or 33 degrees in connection at the higher levels running the NSA. And that's going to be their brotherhood side degrees. We see something else in this, two other things. Talking about the Masonic degrees, the other day we did a show on the degrees in the system. And in there, we showed a chart that showed some of the different, Masonic degrees that after the third degree of a Master Mason, from 4 on up to 33, what are some of the symbols that they use? And you'll notice that that fourth degree, you get the symbology of the single silver key. So we see that here in this, meaning that people who are in the NSA, they're going to be looking for those who have already been trained as Master Masons and are in their fourth degree, working up towards their 33rd degree. Now, they can also be connected to the sovereign military, which we see a very prominent sign here, which is that shield in the middle. Whenever you see that shield with the blue on the top, whether it's just straight blue or whether it has stars, and then you see the stripes going down, that's going to represent your Sons of Liberty. But in connection to your sovereign military group, the Sons of Liberty, you're going to have some other brotherhood groups that are automatically behind the scenes connected to that. One being your Order of the Red Men, which is one of the more ancient orders. So, those are going to be some of the orders that people will have to be engaged in order to, enter into the, work in these departments. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean that absolutely everybody in this who's part of the NSA is going to be a Mason or connected to the Brotherhood or sovereign military. They will strategically and purposely pick good Christian people who honestly have no idea of what's happening behind the scenes or of the Brotherhood or sovereign military connections, and those people will be part of, their cover, if they need covers or alibis. So, when we look at the Mannequin programming, it's important to realize that all of this programming we've been looking at, its roots go back to this foreign government and a sovereign military and their training, programming, or, of hierarchy assets, or their exploitation of those children that they consider expendable. It all is in connection with that. So as we go further, I want to kind of broaden our scope just a little bit. Go ahead to the Mannequin picture. As we talk about this Mannequin program, it's important to realize that all of these programs are under an overall umbrella program in the system. And that overall program is the Monarch program. So all of the other programs are going to fit somewhere within that Monarch programming, which is, it's an overall training program for children in the system. And, the Monarch program is represented by the Monarch butterfly. In that, you have the main body of the butterfly, and you have the two wings, but each split into two parts. So you have 4 pieces there. In that, you're going to have a governance where, the easiest way the system has kept itself hidden in society is that they really limit who understands how the entire system works and operates. So everything is divided up, and you only know, you only know if it's part of your position that you're being trained for, or if it's part of the information you need to know to do your job in the system. With that said, you also have to keep in mind that everything within the system has tiered layers of knowledge. So somebody who's, just finished their Master Mason degree, they're working on their 4th degrees, they're going to have a layer of knowledge as to what do these symbols mean, what does it all entail. Like they're not going to understand the fullness of everything. They're going to have a fourth degree understanding versus somebody who's a 360 degree, they're going to have, you know, a full picture understanding of how things are working and operating. So, you know, as we keep that in mind, you're going to have in the Monarch program the 4 different divisions. And a lot of, as you begin to break down each separate program, a lot of the programs are structured in very similar ways. You know, in the programs themselves, you're going to have kind of 4 cycles or seasons. And you may see, you know, certain survivors that will draw out pictures that represent the programs they've been through. You may see collages of those pictures. All of those things are read in seasons. Why is that? It's because in the programs, you know, you usually have within the time that children go through their training, which usually is age 4.5 to 5, and then to age 10, they're going to go through 4 different distinct training tracks. I guess I don't know what else to call it. Those tracks are going to be aligned with different zodiac calendars. So you'll have, you know, a base, the Chinese calendar, which means that pieces of their training are going to be something that um, are running within kind of a year time frame. So based on the different years that they're in, you're going to get different tracks of things that cross over into that Chinese zodiac um, and the years that it foretells in that. Then you're also going to have a regular zodiac, and you're going to have an Egyptian or a Mayan or Incan calendar that are going to be overlapped in that training. And so everything's going to run on seasons, times, and events. And in that, they're going to pull, you know, children that are in their training programs from different regions or quadrants, and they'll experience kind of that season together or those times and events together. Yet within that, you know, each child is not, you know, they're not going to have the same kids in all of their tracks. They're going to, you know, be moved through different circle groups within their training, which then makes it hard to identify, you know, where are things happening, you know, because as a kid, you don't get that, well, now you're being trained in the mannequin stuff. It's not put that way. You know, we're talking, you've got people who are training these children um, who are using different forms of sorcery, witchcraft, divination. And their power lies in, you know, the kids not understanding what is happening to them or, you know, what they're going through, or even that their traumatic experiences are connected with something that, you know, the system's trying to get an outcome that's going to give them a performance in a job position, um, you know, that they have in mind for the child selected. So, um, you know, the mannequin programs were not the first of, you know, where do they stem from? What's the background? What's the older versions of these programs? I think that the mannequin is more the newer part of the modified of the doll programming within the Monarch program. So let's go ahead to the next one and just talk. You get some of the older survivors, um, you know, that begin to talk about the programming, and the system is key for using imagery. That, you know, image of a butterfly or a monarch, why do they use that imagery? They use it because it can also, you know, it reflects a butterfly, but, you know, it reflects metamorphosis, But more than that, it also is imagery that reminds them of the mind, as well as going back to the rivers that flow from the Garden of Eden and the two trees that come from the Garden of Eden, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So, in that, their main forms of governance, you have a main structure part, like we see in the middle here, that's representing the two trees, the tree of life up top, the tree of knowledge of good and evil on the bottom. Now you'll see that same middle section is your single line Solomonic contract. It's the base colonnade. Um, and it represents contracts with spiritual forces and entities. I break down in my series how, what are the entities at the very top? You're going to have Abaddon. In the middle section, you're going to have Ashtaroth, a contract with her, and on the bottom, you're going to have a contract with Leviathan. Now, in the Kabbalah tree, you're going to see this image where on that bottom section of the middle part there, they're also going to place a woman standing on the head of Leviathan, that representing the contracts between Ashtaroth and Leviathan for the waterways of the womb. And then up at top, you're going to have the man with his arms outstretched like he's on a cross. And that's going to represent the man who's not Jesus Christ. So catch that. The man with his arms outstretched like a cross, that's going to represent a man ascending into his position of godhood. Not Jesus Christ. So let's go ahead go ahead.
Wow. Okay.
So as we get into the doll programming, some of the earliest, as the Nazis came over after World War II, I think, that a lot of these programs and the initial setup for them took place in the early, 1950s, mid 50s, in, we'll just say 1957 through early 1960s, there was connections made between high-level Luciferians who engaged in Solomonic magic and who understood the workings of the spiritual gates. And there were different projects that they were in experiments with those spiritual gates, and they began to reach out to the U.S. military, particularly NORAD, as well as to you had with that the energy companies. All right, so keep in mind that a lot of these programs are connected to the mass movement of spiritual gates as well as energy. In this, you get some of those earlier survivors, like, between the, I'll say 40s and 60s, maybe even some in the 70s, that report that they went through certain doll programs. Some of them will, connect imagery like the cutie dolls that were like this one, where they were put into a state where they looked or they acted like a baby. You also had involved with that the Gerber baby dolls, and some of that then got into the imagery of the baby dolls being used for the buying and selling and trading of children that were being sexually exploited. So, you've got the sexual exploitation aspect, and even further back, like I believe that that it goes farther back with the doll programming. In that, the origins of the doll programming is that you have the system uses different books, stories, fairy tales, and classic literature in their mind control for children. The baby doll programming being connected to some of the classic literature stories, like you have the Thumbelina. So sometimes that would be given as the name instead of a baby doll. They would believe that they were Thumbelina, and if that word was said or different triggers were put out, they would go into a state where, they would be in an infantile state and not be able to do anything. So it could be used to create, personality alters, um, to control children at certain ritual events or during certain abuse situations. You do see it used across the different departments. So you see it, with the Masons, you see it with the Mormons, you see it with the Jesuit Catholic, as well as the Satanists and Kabbalah. So that's one of the older ones, is the cutie dolls and the Gerber baby programming. Then one that I witnessed some of the children being programmed for. Go to the next one. It should be the
Before we
China
move
doll.
on, I just want to ask you something about you call it the cutie doll. We called it the Cupid doll. When you were talking about that type of programming, it got me thinking. There's this whole. I've read about it, and it seems to be coming more and more to the fore again. Like these adults, particularly men, who have this fetish to be a baby. And they literally go to these women, it's part of from what I can gather, they lead like normal lives, but like certain men might go to lounge clubs and stuff like that. These guys go to certain women who then treat them like babies. I mean, they are in diapers, they are in baby grows, they are in it's quite disturbing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, we've always just seen that as a fetish, and I've always just seen that as some kind of a neglect at an infantile state. Okay,
I think it goes further. I think it's connected to certain orders in the system.
Right.
You see that imagery of the ugly looking infant dwarf man for the royal jesters, and in that you get men that use that infant imagery, but also get into graphic, horrific sexual things with infants. So the royal jesters is one of those, and they actually have that even in their logo. Show a infant with this lustful, like a lustful, dirty little old man. It's like,
it's disgusting. I know it's quite a grotesque thing. Someone just actually said in the comment, Dolly Parton comes to mind. I mean, Dolly Parton is forever youthful, right? She just doesn't seem to age and has this baby type voice. I don't know. What is your take on that?
Yeah, I don't know if I would classify her as having gone through, the baby doll programs.
Yeah,
it's hard to know with that, but yeah, let's go on. So the next one then, one that actually Biltmore was one of the locations where they would put kids and would train how to use the dolls in divination in different forms and things like that. And as if you go there to visit, it's down by the kitchen. They've got an offshoot room that they call a craft room, but that was where they would actually make their own porcelain dolls there, and would teach the girls going through priestess training under her how to do this form of divination. So they would make all the stuff with the porcelain, and then would use it. It could go several different ways because, you get the older porcelain dolls, and when you get into the upper elite hierarchy girls, um, the dolls were something that were considered collector items. So you get these generationally old dolls that would be passed down through the family lines. And you would have spirits that would be connected to those dolls. Gloria used to have a bunch of those. I've talked about in one of my stories how up in the attics, she had these areas where she would build her doll houses and have all these different scenes. But she also had dolls, and they would do things to terrify children with those dolls, where in the dark, or you'd be locked in a closet, and the dolls would come alive, and try to do, harm to you. So there were different things that they would teach, and porcelain was one of the easiest materials that they could use for creating, that access with spiritual things. And it'd be a trigger for any child that went through horrific things with dolls when they'd walk into a place and see people had a lot of dolls, and guess what? The room you get to sleep in has all these dolls. Wonderful. They would do different things like that to torment the kids. But they could, beyond the porcelain or the china, this is where you would get, they would place in certain rooms other things, like you'd have the little music boxes with the little ballerina that would go around. And every time you open the box, you get, spiritual phenomena going on. Also, your ballerina programming, some of your plum fairy programming, and the princess programming could all be connected to the porcelain doll. And it wasn't always, they didn't always do the full doll figure. Sometimes they would just do the porcelain mask, and those could be used in rituals where they would teach people to make their own masks and things like that. And with the plum fairy one, that one is specific too, because you get a connection with that, with some of the different programs, underground military labs that are going to be connected, like to the Plum City area, and you get your Jackal Island and some of those others, but you get actual military labs with, creatures, and they're going to have, the plum fairies, those who, like, everything is presented, each child's part. In a lot of it, you're actually acting out stories or plays or scripts, and that's a way for them to cover in the programming, because if the child starts talking about their experience, an adult's mind is going to say, oh, well, that comes out of this children's book, or we were reading that children's book. And they'll actually begin reading stories and stuff in programming, or all throughout in the programming or the training, because they want to cause that confusion and use that as a cover if the child starts to talk about what they were experiencing. It's a way to discredit.
Absolutely.
So in that, the doll programs are going to be used, like, they're going to want to trigger certain reactions. The biggest reactions are going to be fear. The other thing is, you get where children are trained to respond or react in certain ways. So with fear, often you get the freeze, and you can get the numb, or the inability to react, which is going to be paralyzed. So a lot of these things would be used to paralyze children in terror just by the sight of something. So, if somebody came walking in with a doll, or all of a sudden they find themselves in a room and all there is a doll in a chair, or a doll in the bed, it's going to trigger a certain response that then causes that child to not be able to react in a way to protect themselves from the harm that's being used against them.
Oftentimes maybe the opposite, right? To, as you say, it's like that fight, flight, or freeze, right? So they would just freeze instead of fighting or running, which would be the normal kind of human reaction when you're in danger.
Right.
A child would normally run.
Or crying out, or, you know,
yes,
vocalizing against it.
Wow.
Yeah, it would make it, you know, it's used a lot in the sexual exploitation so that the children can't combat the rape. And that's really a lot of what it's used for, is, you know, for compliance so that they can't combat, you know, that they're being sexually exploited. So then you get the other extreme, you know, you get the freeze and the paralyzing in the triggering. But then you have other dolls that were used. You had like the Chatty Cathy. You had, I forget, I think it was Sexy Lexi. I forget the name of the doll, but it was something that rhymed with that. And then you also had Tiny Kissy, the Tiny Kissy dolls, and you had the Betty Boop dolls. All of those being used, and the ones that kind of look Japanese with the geisha looks, all of those would be used to trigger girls to go into this, you know, sexual pursuing, very erotic way of presenting themselves, where then you have little girls that are, you know, dressing or acting like provocative women. So, you know, some of the dolls could be used to trigger that, the girls into the alluring and the seduction in the sexual magic. Then you have, you know, others like the Russian doll programming, which, go ahead to the next one. And in that, you know, you would have different breakdowns where, you know, within an image of self, there would be further layers. Some of that gets into the, you know, the use of the mirrors in programming, where people, the children can't, you know, get a grasp of their true identity. Everything always continues to go on and on. And when you think you've got to the bottom of it, it just keeps going deeper and deeper. And, you know, that was made to make children feel like they could never know who they were, and to create that feeling of being lost and never being able to find closure or to come to the end of things. You know, it's meant to cause a hopelessness and a despair, as well as, you know, insecurity and frustration, you know, in identity. So those are some of the different doll programs that are kind of behind the scenes of the Mannequin programming. Let's look at, go ahead with what you were going to say, and then we'll.
No, all good. I was just what I was saying about sorry, the Russian dolls. You know, it's that kind of where you're seeing however many dolls within each other. So would all of those the little dolls, would they, I mean, they're replicas of each other. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering, would that be little avatars within avatars, if you understand what I'm saying?
In a way, yes. That would be maybe a good way to put it, is that you've got avatars within avatars.
So interesting. Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Got the carousel. Wow.
Yeah. So behind the scenes of all this, again, you've got layers of programs. So most of the doll programs would be under the Monarch program, and then the specific program underneath that they're going to fall under are the Carousel programs. Um, so you're going to get like a lot of your uh, it can be boys too, so I'm not excluding boys. And I would say, I think the Mannequin program is both girls and boys, but you'd get a lot of the programs targeting those that, you know, the children, whether hierarchy or expendable, that were specifically being used for sex magic. Um, and with the carousels, you get the layered um, the mirror programming, the programming with certain lights, certain sounds or music that's meant to run on a loop. When you think about even your music boxes, you get something that kind of continues to play on a loop as long as it's wound up. You can get that imagery of the winding or the twisting cords that kind of just keep, or the twisted ribbons that keep going around in like an infinity type loop. So those are going to be some of the behind the scenes symbols that can be used with these programs or training. And usually what they'll do in this is that they're beginning to teach children with the carousel program how to use different access points or doorways into the spiritual world. And again, they'll have already gone through their testing as to whether they're a remote viewer by astral projection, or whether they have to actually enter in. If they actually have to enter in, they're going to be taught how to use these loops, whether light or sound, or these access points, to get into the spirit realm. So things like, you're going to get on the carousel for a ride, you go around a time or two, and when you get off, you're now someplace else. Or you go through the doors or windows or mirrors in the carousel, and you end up in another place. Um, in that too, you know, you, they teach you how to create doorways in the spirit realm. Once you go into another place, if it's not a physical place, you're taught to create a certain door that every time you open that door, you're going to end up at a carousel, and you can use that to get to any other carousel. So you can
Wow.
um, like places can get you in like places. If you go through a mirror,
Yes.
you can come back through any mirror anywhere you can imagine. You get on a carousel, you can go around and end up on any other carousel around the world and actually be in that place. So they're going to use this programming as part of the training for accessing the spiritual world and creating different avenues in the spiritual journeying.
Wow.
Um, let's go to
Fascinating.
the next one. So mannequin thing too, when you think of that, the common places you're going to find that are going to be, like the department stores was a high place where you'd find that, the malls. Also, in a lot of the elite mansions, you might have areas where they've got mannequins or dolls. Um, Sometimes shipping areas, you'd find those, and they'll just have them in weird places. And um, you know, again, they're going to use a lot of it to one, as a way to monitor and listen and report back to someone, about what's being heard. Um, Higher levels of magic, they can, whatever that person in the mannequin state can see, you know, their higher ups can see too. So they can use it as a way to look through or see or view. And then, you know, they will use it in training to taunt, to haunt, and to play mind games. You know, some of the first forms where I think the mannequin programming stuff was in connection to, like, you have trainings for the oracles and the priestesses that come through the Greek islands, and in that they, you know, we just brought up earlier today the stories of Medusa, but you would get in that priestess training, you know, they're going to give quests to the knights and the priestesses, and one of those tracks, you know, they're going to have to locate Medusa and try to take her out and stuff like that. And you would see in certain places where you would get statues of children. You know, you might see them in some of that training. If you found yourself at some of the elite mansions in their garden areas, you're going to all of a sudden start seeing all these statues and stuff. And they're going to use that to taunt the hierarchy children, one, to fear that there are those who can do witchcraft like Medusa, turning you into stone. And, you know, if you, there's an, you know, it's meant to make you feel helpless and afraid, and that you won't be able to get out of the situation. And then, you know, again, it's all forms of witchcraft, divination. Some of the forms you get in that is, you know, that you get high level training in the use of blood magic, divination and necromancy, learning how to change the states of matter. So, you know, changing something from flesh to stone, or, you know, something from flesh into another form. You're going to get the necromancy in that. You know, if someone in your team is turned into stone, can you undo that spell? Can you, you know, turn stone back into flesh?
Wow.
So you'll get different things. You'll get the freeze tag game with the mannequins where, you know, if you get frozen, you're stuck in that state until somebody unfreezes you. You know, so there'll be different things just depending on the training, the obstacles, or the, you know, what they're trying to, what types of magic they're trying to teach you that you may go through in that. So that you get the training phase, but then you get the operational phase for people who become very skilled in those type of things. And what can the Department of Defense or the CIA use those people in?
Wow.
You know, that's the question. And
that in itself, sorry, I'm just going to take this off for a moment. But that in itself opens up a whole new can of worms, right? Because if we're just going back to the little intro from that James Caspot's introduction, he talks about the CIA literally using drug money to fund these projects.
right.
And then, of course, they then start then of course they start training them in also all sorts of military operations, which is insane. Oh, that's what I'm thinking. Even like the Russian doll programming, that for me, I would imagine they would use in military type programming, you know?
Like in the MK Ultra and stuff, yeah, where things are
Yeah.
layered in the different file drawers,
Yeah.
as I call it. And
Yeah, absolutely. And then you'd have the different avatars, and each one is, they look the same, but they're all doing their own little thing,
yeah,
right?
look the same, maybe even have the same name.
Yeah.
Yeah. but all a clone with each a different thing
Mission.
that it can focus on or do. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and you get in that created the nonstop too, where people keep going. If something happens to the main avatar, all of a sudden the next one kicks in, and you get all these kick-ins that it'll keep going. And and how do you combat something like that? You get people that just I don't know another way to put it. They just won't die. They
Yeah.
keep coming back. And it's really, you're dealing with magic, that
Yeah.
different forms of magic with that and what
Sure.
kicks in. Yeah. Completing the mission or the task at all cost is kind of, what they've created with some of the super soldiers or programs with that. So then, some of the other imagery you're going to see in this programming for the dolls, we talked about, you might see carousel imagery. This is another one. You'll get the tiger butterfly, that you'll see the imagery with the yellow, the blue, a little hints of the orange, and the black and stuff. But interestingly enough, like, with that tiger imagery, you also have connection to one another of the behind the scenes orders, which is going to be mostly through your Jesuit Catholic Church. And that's going to be Opus Dei. Like when you see the yellow and the blue, that's going to be your Opus Dei. And, in the, go back real quick. Let me go on one more, and then let's go back to the beginning. I want to look at that sigil again, because in that sigil we see an interesting thing. Yeah. Usually when you see that shield, you're going to see the blue part of it more of a darker blue, like our flag. It's very purposeful here that blue is a lighter teal color. And when you see that lighter blue teal color, that's going to go to two primary orders. It can be connected to the Opus Dei, but it also will be connected to your order of the Polar Star. And then in there you get your upper orders of that, which are going to be your order of the Seraphim, which will be the regional leaders. You'll get the order of the Mongolia. And so it's, is that just one more order, the Opus Dei, right? But that's connected to the NSA. And we know that they're highly involved in child trafficking. So, the royal jesters, the Opus Dei, all of those being connected to the sexual exploitation of the infants and children. Go to the last one. So the last image, besides the tiger butterfly, which is common with the doll programs, you get the imagery of the moths. So the difference, is going to be the light spectrum magic. You got two light spectrum magics, which we've talked about. And go ahead and take it down for a minute here. With the yellow spectrum, that's going to be more, done during daytime, and you get a whole rainbow light spectrum connected under that yellow spectrum. So, the tiger lilies are going to be trained to do stuff during the day. Now, think of that. Even where else do you hear that name? You get the connection between the tiger butterfly and the tiger lilies, which the tiger lilies go to, the imagery from the Disney Peter Pan. And you get Peter finding himself on this remote place with all the red men. right? Think about that. You get Order of the Red Men. We talked about how that shield, right, can represent who? The Order of the Red Men. Okay, so listen carefully to all these connections. Um, so you get the Order of the Red Men connected to the training of the tiger lilies, the little girls that are going to be used for sexual exploitation for them who are part of the Order of the Red Men. Where is that going to happen? Where, you know, are all those Peter Pan scenes and programming? That's primarily coming out of your Palisades, California military base, and, you know, off of the Pacific Islands. So that's going to also include your Hawaii military bases. So you'll get all of, you know, that interconnective pieces as to what are the children being trained for. The moths are going to be used more in your blue spectrum magic, your night magic. Um, you know, so that's where the difference between the butterflies and the moths. And you'll see more of your moths being more northern training areas. Usually, you know, you could get some connected to your, um, I'll just say different programs, different focuses in that imagery with the moth. But yeah.
Wow, it's interesting because you're talking about, you know, the moth at nighttime as well, because moths obviously being the nighttime beautiful creatures, because they really are beautiful moths,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
How fascinating. Wow. I wanted to ask you, when the kids go through this programming, um, do they get one type? I mean, I get that obviously they've tested and, you know, tried and blah, blah, blah. But is there one type of programming that they get, or can there be multi-layers of programs that they put on different programs, different types of programming?
Well, and it's, you know, it's a fine line because you get the, you know, there is a difference between the training and programs versus programming. Like you can be trained through a program, but not be programmed. You know, programmed is
Right.
more like, you know, they'll still force your will, but you know, the programming was more intense and more psychologically torturing than
Yeah.
the actual training, even as bad as the training was. But you know, in that you can have the layers and the multiple things because you're going to have four major tracks, but the tracks are not just, you know, I mean, if you think about a 5D chessboard, you know, just that middle layer of that chessboard is going to be your base training that you're doing. But within that training, you're going to have layers above and you're going to have layers below. So it very much is like an onion. You can have things layered on top of other layers, which is why, you know, everything feels so messed up for survivors because, you know, they have just pieces of puzzles, they have images of moments in their head, and those pieces of their memories, you know, it seems very scattered because there's so much. And
Yes.
in the spirit world, you know, a lot of the training occurs in between spaces or, you know, from the physical to the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, you have no time. So you go all of a sudden from, you know, in the physical to the spiritual where there is no time. So you can all of a sudden have this bunch of stuff happening at one time, then all of a sudden you get like this pause that feels, you know, you're like, you're in reality, and all of a sudden it's all the spiritual world stuff again. And that's why things feel so chaotic, because you're constantly going between the physical and the spiritual, and it's so
Right.
taxing on the physical body as well, and the spiritual body, because we're
Oh,
not, I mean, at some extent we are made to do that. We're made to be in fellowship with God, to dwell in his presence. We're made for that. But it there's an infilling with the Holy Spirit, versus when you're interacting with all these other spirits, you're not getting any of the nourishment or the infilling. There's nothing sustaining you. It's a constant drain and pull on your energy, versus, the presence and the glory of God will always, um, will always bring that restoration to your soul and your body. Um, you know,
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's true what you say, our physical bodies in their state, I don't believe the way where we currently are designed to move through different dimensions in the way that the kids who've been weaponized have been forced to do. So I would
right.
imagine that must cause a lot of health problems, especially later on in life, body
Yeah.
problems, right? So yeah, I think that's amazing. Wow. Yeah, I think I just had that one question. Sure. Wow. Thank you, Jessie. That was very, I'm still, the Russian, for some reason, the Russian doll programming was that, and the carousel programming grabbed my attention, because today especially, because it just seems to me that would be how they would function. And as you say, especially using the carousels as magical places, right? Where you can kind of
Right.
come in and go out and find yourself right back here again, right? So it's really, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, guys and girls. Jess, is there anything else from your side?
No, I think that's good.
I want to say thank you so much. Very, very interesting shows today. So, and again, it's part of the unpacking, it's part of the discussing, it's part of the disclosure, it's part of the awareness. There is so much, the more we start digging, or even not digging, but scratching, there's just amazing things that are surfacing about all of this, and there's so many of them. And what's disturbing to me is the amount of kids who are now adults in many instances that have been subjected to and affected by this. It's crazy, man. So yeah,
Right.
let's just shine the light of awareness, and yeah, we'll start dissolving the dark, that's for sure. So before we say farewell, thank you so much again, everybody. I really appreciate you in the chats. And again, congratulations to John Hodges because Caleb has nominated you. I'm not sure if you're in the chat, John. I know you in the earlier show, to go into Jessie's amazing workshop in March as well. Captain of my soul, you have been nominated by Lisa D. So congratulations, you get to go as well. And then, of course, Stephanie, who I haven't seen or heard from yet today, but I will email her. So either Stephanie will go herself, or she will nominate someone who can go in her spot. So congratulations, everybody. Oh, and I was going to give away some memberships today, but having teething problems, trying to, I've got to go from my solutions account onto Aquarius Rising Africa to be able to do it like that. And I haven't linked my right card yet. So give me a moment or two, please. Still figuring all of this out. Grandma, no teething problems with technology. Oh, shit. Anyway, thank you so much.
I think you do marvelous, but
you're so sweet,
we can be
Jessie.
patient for the hostess with the mostess.
Thank you so much. Well, you guys make it the most, so I'm grateful for that. So, Jess, if there's anything that you maybe still want to end off with, or just end off for us in prayer, that'll be wonderful.
All right. Lord, again, we thank you, and we just lift up to you today, Lord, all those who have been victims of this system and victims of different, whether it was training, whether it was programs, whether it was experiments. Even if we witness these things as kids happening to other kids, Lord, we ask that you would bring each of us to that place of healing. We ask that you would renew to us being able to see these symbols and different things that were taken from your designs, Lord, that you meant for good, that you meant to be enjoyed and delighted in. We ask that you would restore that to us, Lord, that we may once again have peace, joy, and delight in the things that you have made. We ask, Lord, that you would bring healing over all negative emotions, whether that's fear, whether that's numbness, whether that's being paralyzed in terror, Lord. We ask that all those struggling with that, that you would give a special touch and healing today, Lord, especially those who struggle with that at night in their dreams. And we ask, Lord, for that complete healing and restoration of the body and the soul. And we thank you that you are the Lord, our God, our healer. And we just lay our lives in your hands. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much,
Yep.
Jessie. Thank you so much, everybody. And again, congratulations to everyone. And those who haven't yet, please go vote for little Patrick. He will be our Aracat of the year on his beautiful little, cover cat. He'll be the cover cat. Our cover cat. Look forward to that. Thank you, everybody. God bless you all. I will see you again sometime this week. I'm not sure when. I'm still recovering from being away, but I'll catch up in a day or two. So thank you so much. Take good care, and we'll see you very, very soon. God bless you all. Bye-bye.